Hey guys, hope you're having a good day today. Just wanted to review over some of the things we talked about yesterday, and then we're going to look a little bit more today at the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and specifically the overall effects they have on your body. Again, that fight or flight response from that sympathetic nervous system, and that rest and digest response from the parasympathetic nervous system. Also, don't forget today that you do have a quiz over lab exercises 17 and 18 to complete. And then tomorrow you will have your lab exam 3 on Google Classroom. So again, just to review, remember that your sympathetic division of your autonomic nervous system is called thoracocolumbar because it includes spinal nerves that branch from T1 through L2. And then remember, our parasympathetic division of our autonomic nervous system is called craniosacral because it includes our several of our cranial nerves as well as our spinal nerves S2 through S4. So craniosacral. Remember that the sympathetic nerves are going to exit the spinal cord as spinal nerves, sympathetic nerves, or splanchnic nerves, whereas our parasympathetic nerves are going to exit the spinal cord as cranial nerves or pelvic splanchnic nerves. Also remember there are two different types of ganglia where the preganglionic and postganglionic neurons will synapse with the sympathetic division, and that's going to be the chain ganglia, which are paravertebral or beside the vertebral column, and then the collateral ganglia, which are prevertebral, which means they are kind of anterior to the spinal cord. Again, remember those spinal and sympathetic nerves synapse with the pre and postganglionic neuron synapse in the chain ganglia, and then the splanchnic nerves, those pre and postganglionic neuron synapse in the collateral ganglia. Remember that for the parasympathetic division, the preganglionic and postganglionic neurons synapse in terminal ganglia. Also remember that those terminal ganglia are very near or actually in the wall of the organs that they are that are their effector organs. So therefore, this means that with our parasympathetic division, the preganglionic neuron is going to be very long because it has a long way to travel from the spinal cord to the terminal ganglia, which are in or very near the target organ, the effector organ. And so then that means that the postganglionic neuron will be very short because remember the postganglionic neuron exits the ganglia and goes to the effector organ. And so the ganglia are right there near or in the wall of the organ. So the postganglionic neuron is very short. Just the opposite is true with the sympathetic division because those ganglia are paravertebral or prevertebral, meaning they're beside or anterior to the spinal cord. They're very close to the spinal cord. The preganglionic neuron is going to be very short. It doesn't have very far to travel from the spinal cord to the ganglia. And then the postganglionic neuron is going to be much longer because it has to travel from that ganglion that's very near the spinal cord all the way to the effector organ, whatever that organ may be. So the postganglionic neuron there would be a lot longer. Okay. Today we're going to be looking at first the different plexuses that these some of these spinal nerves, sympathetic nerves, etc., can be part of. Again, we see that with the postganglionic axons. Remember again the preganglionic synapses with the postganglionic neuron in the ganglia, and then that postganglionic neuron extends from the ganglion to the effector organ, whether it be a gland or smooth muscle, cardiac muscle in an organ. So these postganglionic neurons can actually extend directly to the organ or gland itself, or they can actually become part of a plexus, an autonomic nerve plexus. Well, what is a plexus? A plexus is a complex interconnected network formed by neurons of sympathetic and parasympathetic division. So these plexuses can have neurons that are both parasympathetic and sympathetic. And it's just a complex interconnected network of neurons. So in some cases, again, the postganglionic neuron can actually extend directly to the target organ, the effector organ, or the postganglionic neuron can become part of a nerve plexus that then innervates that organ, that target organ. These plexuses are going to be named in general either for the organs they supply or else for the blood vessels along which they are found, because, and we've talked about this before, your blood vessels and nerves kind of take the same route. Okay, so you're gonna have an artery and a vein and a nerve all running alongside each other, all running together. So sometimes these plexuses may be nerve plexuses may be named for the blood vessels that they travel with through the tissues to the target organs. Again, as we just reviewed a second ago, the outflow of the sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system is through spinal nerves, splanchnic nerves, or sympathetic nerves to the effector organs. Again, directly to the effector organ, or they become part of a plexus that then innervates the effector organ. And then again, remember the parasympathetic outflow is through cranial and pelvic splanchnic nerves, either again directly to the effector organ, or they become part of a plexus and then travel to and innervate the effector organ. So let's look specifically at the different nerves and which ones are part of plexuses and which ones are not. In general, for your sympathetic axons, the spinal nerves travel directly to the effector organ. So they travel through gray rami communicans to innervate sweat glands, muscle and blood vessels to cause blood vessels to constrict or dilate. And these are going to be blood vessels that are in your skin and in your skeletal muscle, and then as well as those erector pili muscles in the skin. So the spinal nerves are pretty much traveling directly to the effector organs. They are traveling directly to the sweat glands, the erector pili muscles, the smooth muscle in your blood vessels, and that are in your skeletal muscle as well as in your skin. The rest of these become part of plexuses, okay? Our sympathetic nerves can become part of one of two different plexuses. Some sympathetic nerves are going to become part of head and neck nerve plexuses that are then going to travel to sweat glands, the smooth muscle of blood vessels and skeletal muscle and skin in the head and neck, as well as smooth muscle of the eye, smooth muscle in the salivary glands, and erector pili muscles there. Again, in the skin that is on the face and the neck. So again, these head and neck nerve plexuses, these sympathetic nerves become part of head and neck nerve plexuses, and those again are going to be innervating things that are in the head and neck, as far as blood vessels in the skeletal muscles in the head and neck, blood vessels in the skin in the head and neck, erector pili muscles in the skin and the head and neck, sweat glands in the skin and the head and neck. Other sympathetic nerves, so some of the sympathetic nerves become part of nerve plexuses in the head and neck. Other sympathetic nerves become part of nerve plexuses that are in the thoracic cavity, specifically the cardiac plexus and the pulmonary plexus. So other sympathetic nerves become part of a plexus that innervates the heart, and then some of those sympathetic nerves become part of a plexus that innervates the lungs. And then finally, the splanchnic nerves become part of abdominopelvic nerve plexuses. And there are several abdominopelvic nerve plexuses. You don't have to know the names of these, but you can see there are about 4 of them, and you can see the different organs that are being innervated by these abdominopelvic plexuses. The celiac plexus is innervating things like the diaphragm, the stomach, the liver, the kidneys. The superior mesenteric plexus is innervating small intestine, colon, pancreas. The inferior mesenteric plexus is innervating the lower portion of the large intestine, the colon and the rectum. And then the superior and inferior hypogastric plexuses are innervating part of the colon as well as the urinary bladder and the reproductive organs. So again, All of these are abdominal pelvic nerve plexuses that those splanchnic nerves become part of and innervate and help to control the function of those abdominal pelvic organs, all the way from your diaphragm and liver all the way down to your urinary bladder and reproductive organs. Okay, so that is going to be, how nerve plexuses are involved as far as in the sympathetic division. Okay, so now let's look at how the nerve plexuses that are involved in the parasympathetic division. First of all, the cranial nerves basically are going to extend directly to the organs that they are innervating. So, for example, your cranial nerve 3, your oculomotor nerve, is going to synapse in a terminal ganglion called the ciliary ganglion, and this controls muscles that are associated with the eye. Okay, the ciliary muscles are associated with the eye as well, the iris, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about the 5 senses. Cranial nerve number 7, again, remember, is a parasympathetic, is a part of the parasympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system. This is your facial nerve. These are the ganglion where the pre and postganglionic neurons synapse, and it is going to be innervating the lacrimal glands, which are the glands that are involved in producing the tears that keep your eyes wet. As well as glands in your nasal cavity and salivary glands in your mouth. Cranial nerve number 9, the glossopharyngeal nerve. Again, the otic ganglion is the terminal ganglia. Terminal ganglia is kind of the general term for all of the ganglia that are associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. But again, these ganglia actually have specific names. The ciliary ganglion is a terminal ganglion. The pterygopalatine and submandibular ganglia are terminal ganglia. The otic ganglion is a terminal ganglion. So all of these are specific terminal ganglia. And specifically, that glossopharyngeal nerve is innervating the salivary gland, the parotid gland. And then, so those cranial nerves extend directly to the effector organs that they are innervating. Then we have the other cranial nerve that is involved in the parasympathetic nervous system, as well as those pelvic splanchnic nerves. They become part of nerve plexuses again. So again, similar to the sympathetic. The vagus nerve, which is cranial nerve 10, as well as thoracic nerve plexuses, cardiac and pulmonary plexuses, are going to be innervating heart, lungs, and esophagus. The abdominal pelvic nerve plexuses are going, this is going to involve, again, parts of that vagus nerve, going to be innervating things like your stomach and other visceral organs. And then your pelvic splanchnic nerves become part of pelvic nerve plexuses that innervate the colon, rectum, urinary bladder, and reproductive organs. So I hope you notice that we talked here about how we have sympathetic nerves innervating the eye. We have sympathetic nerves innervating the heart and lungs. We have splanchnic nerves innervating the organs of the abdominal pelvic cavity. And then we go over here to the parasympathetic axons, and we have a lot of the same thing. We have cranial nerves innervating the eyes. We have vagus nerve, which is another cranial nerve, as well as pelvic splanchnic nerves innervating the heart, lungs, digestive organs, reproductive organs. So, is that a mistake? No. The sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems pretty much innervate a lot of organs. They both innervate a lot of organs, which means they both affect most of our organs. In certain situations, they are going to cause our heart to speed up, our breathing to speed up, our blood pressure to increase, so on and so forth. And then in other situations, the other part of that autonomic nervous system will take over, and it will cause the heart rate to slow down, the breathing rate to slow down, the blood pressure to decrease. So again, we have what we call dual innervation. Most of our organs are innervated by both systems. Okay, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. So it's not a mistake when we say, okay, we have sympathetic nerves innervating our eyes. We have sympathetic nerves innervating our heart and lungs. We have splanchnic nerves innervating our abdominal pelvic organs. And then with the sympathetic nervous system, and then we go look over here with the parasympathetic, and we have cranial nerves innervating our eyes, and vagus nerves innervating our heart and lungs, and pelvic splanchnic nerves innervating our abdominal pelvic organs. This is because there are nerves from both parts of the autonomic nervous system. there are nerves from both the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems that innervate the heart and lungs, and the abdominal pelvic organs, and the eyes. Both, because both of those systems, depending upon the conditions, both, one system or the other will be more in control of controlling the function of those organs, and that's called dual innervation. Okay, so let's go ahead and look then at the enteric nervous system. We're not going to talk about this a lot, but the enteric nervous system consists of nerve plexuses that are found within the wall of the digestive tract. There are 3 places where the nerves in this, where the neurons in these enteric nerve plexuses come from. Some of the neurons in these nerve plexuses that are part of the enteric nervous system are sensory neurons that are connecting specifically our digestive tract to our central nervous system. Others are autonomic motor neurons that connect our central nervous system to the digestive tract. And then there are specific enteric neurons that are only found in these enteric nerve plexuses. So what are the different types of neurons in the enteric nervous system? Well, there are enteric sensory neurons, again, that are going to be taking in information from the digestive organs, detecting changes in the chemical composition of the materials inside the digestive organs, detecting stretching of the digestive tract wall. So again, carrying information from those digestive organs to our central nervous system. Then there are going to be motor neurons that are going to be carrying information to those digestive organs to cause them to respond to these changes that are being detected by the sensory neurons. So some of these motor neurons can stimulate the smooth muscle to contract and the glands to secrete, the digestive glands to secrete enzymes and things. Other of those enteric motor neurons will inhibit the production of the secretions of the glands in the digestive system, or inhibit the contraction of the smooth muscle in the digestive tract. Again, whether stimulation or inhibition happens just depends upon the changes that are being detected by the sensory neurons. And then we also have enteric interneurons, which are basically just like any other interneuron. They connect the enteric sensory neurons to the enteric motor neurons. So again, you have these enteric nerve plexuses in the wall of the digestive tract that just are concerned with digestive organs and the digestion of food and nothing else. Again, this is the dual innervation that I was talking about. Our autonomic nervous system maintains homeostasis of body functions by adjusting those functions to match the level of physical activity. Okay, and we're going to talk about exercise here, but it doesn't just have to be exercise. It could be stress, which is going to have the same effects on your body as if you're exercising. So whatever is going on in your environment, whether you're exercising, whether you're stressed, whether you're relaxed, the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions of the autonomic nervous system work together and adjust body functions accordingly. So again, dual innervation means that an organ is innervated by both the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. We have nerves from both the sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions that are extending either directly to the organ or through nerve plexuses to that organ. And again, most organs are dually innervated, meaning most of our organs, as we saw when we looked just a second ago and I pointed it out, most of our organs have nerves from both divisions, the parasympathetic and sympathetic, innervating them. However, there are a few that are innervated only by one. For example, your sweat glands and your blood vessels are almost exclusively innervated by your sympathetic division. So when you're exercising, when you're stretched, when you're stressed, you are sweating. Your blood vessels are dilating to allow extra blood to get to those skeletal muscles so you can contract them to do the exercises that you're doing, or to get away from whatever the stress is that's bothering you. So again, most organs are dually innervated. There may be a few that are not. So looking specifically at the effects that the sympathetic nerves are going to have on your body. Again, think about exercise, think about stress, think about fight or flight. What happens? Well, your heart rate increases. Your blood vessels in your skeletal and cardiac muscles are going to dilate, vasodilation. So smooth muscle will be stimulated in your blood vessels, to allowing those blood vessels to dilate so that you can get increased blood flow to that muscle, so that you can, so that muscle can produce the energy that it needs to deal with the increased stress or the increased physical activity. Constriction of the blood vessels in your digestive organs, in your urinary organs, okay, organs that are not involved in exercise or not involved in getting away from danger or whatever the case may be, because you're going to actually slow down that digestion. You're going to slow down that urination because you're not worried about going to the bathroom. You're not worried about eating and digesting your food. You are worried about dealing with whatever physical activity or stress that you are under. Dilation of the air passages, opening up the respiratory passages so that breathing rate can increase. Increased production of glucose, again, providing more energy for those muscles to be able to contract for the physical activity that you're doing. Again, and how do we increase the production of glucose? Well, we break down glycogen in your skeletal muscle cells and your liver cells. So your skeletal muscle cells and liver cells store glycogen that can be broken down into glucose for to meet increased energy needs. Also increasing your body temperature, resulting in increased sweat production. And again, we're going to vasoconstrict blood vessels and organs not involved in exercise, such as your digestive organs and your urinary organs, because you're not going to be using those. You're not going to be worried about digesting food and going to the bathroom when you are under stress or exercising. And then we're going to see in many ways the parasympathetic is just the opposite. During resting conditions, your parasympathetic nervous system will be more dominant. We call this the rest and digest response. So when you're resting, then your heart rate is going to slow down. So we're going to have vasoconstriction of skeletal and cardiac muscle blood vessels, and we're going to have vasodilation of blood vessels associated with digesting and urine production, because when we're resting, our heart and breathing rate are going to be slower, and we're going to increase our digestive contraction, the muscle in the digestive tract, that contraction, and so we need more blood to get to those muscles so that they can do more contraction, so we can digest our food. We're going to stimulate those digestive organs, those digestive glands, to increase their secretion of enzymes and things, so that we can do more digestion and more urine production. Again, blood pressure will lower, heart rate will lower, air passages will be constricted, and slow our breathing rate down. So again, pretty much the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system's fight or flight response. And I really think that this is a graphic that I created myself to kind of put everything together and have the most important things that you need to be familiar with in one place, where you can look back and forth and just compare the two. So again, we see how the sympathetic nervous system is thoracocolumbar. Those ganglia are para or prevertebral. Specifically, the chain ganglia are paravertebral, the collateral ganglia are prevertebral. So therefore, because these are very close, either right beside or anterior to the spinal cord, the preganglionic neuron is short, and the postganglionic neuron must be very long to extend from those ganglia all the way to the effector organ. The outflow, the spinal nerves. Remember, we have the pre and post synapsing in the chain ganglia, and then those spinal nerves running to the skin and blood vessels of the skeletal muscle. We have the pre and post ganglionic neurons synapsing in chain ganglia, and then exiting as sympathetic nerves running to our thoracic cavity, our heart and lungs. We have the pre and post ganglionic neurons synapsing in the collateral ganglia, and those postganglionic neurons leaving as splanchnic nerves to go to our visceral organs in our abdominal pelvic cavity. And then also remember that that some of our preganglionic neurons in our sympathetic nervous system actually synapse not with a postganglionic neuron in a ganglion, but with cells of the adrenal medulla via a splanchnic nerve, and stimulate it to release the hormones epinephrine and norepinephrine, where they are released into the bloodstream and travel all over the body and have widespread effects. Again, the sympathetic nervous system is responsible for the fight or flight response, and then we have some of the specific effects on the body as a result of that sympathetic nervous system, sending action potentials down these nerves. Heart rate increased, breathing rate is increased as our air passages are dilated. Blood pressure increases, body temperature increases, sweating, decreased urination and digestion. Okay, and then with the parasympathetic, remember it is craniosacral. We involve terminal ganglia. This is where the pre and post ganglionic neurons are going to synapse. Again, remember these terminal ganglia are on or very near the effector organ, so this means the preganglionic neuron has to be very long to get from the spinal cord to that terminal ganglia, and then the postganglionic neuron is going to be very short because those terminal ganglia are so close to the effector organ. Remember that cranial nerves 3, 7, 9, and 10 are going to be parasympathetic. Again, these are going to synapse in the terminal ganglia and then extend to effector organs. And then the pelvic splanchnic nerves also, you have pre and post ganglionic neurons synapsing in the terminal ganglia, and then that pelvic splanchnic nerves extending to the effector organs. Again, we have more local effects with this parasympathetic nervous system. Basically what this means, guys, is that you can innervate, you can have an effect on just a couple of organs because of this right here, because these preganglionic neurons synapse with the cells of the adrenal medulla via a splanchnic nerve and cause that adrenal medulla to release hormones into the bloodstream that travel all over the body. The sympathetic nervous system has a more widespread effect. Okay, it affects the whole body at once. Our parasympathetic, not so much. Our parasympathetic nervous system doesn't stimulate the release of any hormones into the bloodstream to travel all over the body. So we have more localized effects, meaning that parasympathetic nervous system can affect just 1 or 2 organs at a time and not the whole body. Whereas the sympathetic nervous system, it's going to affect the whole body due to the release of these hormones into the bloodstream. Again, that parasympathetic nervous system is responsible for the rest and digest response. Some of the effects on the body as a result of the action potentials traveling along the parasympathetic nerves. Our heart rate is going to decrease. Breathing rate will decrease because the air passages are being constricted. The blood pressure will decrease. Body temperature will decrease. And what will increase will be your digestive processes as well as urine production. So I hope that this is a really good graphic, a visual to kind of help sum up everything and give you the most important things that you need to be familiar with all in one place. I made this myself last semester after we went over the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems because I wanted to have all of the most important information in one place where I could go back and review and remember, and I thought if this would help me, I was sure it would help you guys too, so that's why I created this and put this on here for you. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day. Don't forget to do your your lab exercises 17 and 18 quiz today before 11:55 tonight, and then again, don't forget tomorrow you have your lab exam 3. I hope you have a good rest of your week and a good weekend. And good luck on your quiz today and your lab exam tomorrow. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.